He had given away fortunes without blinking, until one small boy made his daughter smile for the first time in months. The tires of his black Mercedes hissed against the icy Chicago street as a sudden shout cut through the hum of traffic. Inside, the soft hum of the heater wrapped around polished leather and silence. Then came a tiny gasp. Dakota's palm pressed to the fingerprint-free window, her eyes locked on a wiry boy spinning in thin shoes across the frozen pavement. His breath showed in soft bursts. His laughter didn't match the weather. Harrison Langley had built towers that touched the clouds, but that simple smile sliced through the armor he wore to survive them. He ordered the driver to stop. Security protested. He waved them silent. Money could control everything, except the moment your child remembers joy. Crowds turned. Phones lifted. A man in an expensive coat stepping out near a shoeless street kid. It was an image too sharp to ignore. Samantha Reeves watched from the park's edge with a press badge tucked inside her coat, curiosity pulling her closer. Something about his stillness and the cold didn't fit the stories she'd written about him. Beneath the coat collar and corporate legend was a father short of peace. Harrison stepped closer, slipped off his gloves, and reached into his pocket. The boy froze mid-spin. Their eyes met, one filled with need, the other with guilt carved over years. The wind bit hard, yet neither moved. A flash exploded, camera. Another followed. Shouts, questions, flashes. The moment that made Dakota smile turned into the moment that would hunt them all. Have you ever seen one-act twist from kindness to chaos in seconds? Tell me in the comments if you have, because that's where this story begins. One smile that changed everything. By morning, he wasn't a hero. He was a headline. Hashtag dance for likes flooded every feed. Talk shows mocked a billionaire who bought a hug from poverty. Harrison's PR team crowded in his glass office, their voices bouncing off panic. He stared at the muted television, where a still image of his face burned beside the boy's. He knew how fast admiration turns into accusation. He'd built empires on that truth. Samantha Reeves sat at a newsroom desk, surrounded by stale coffee and noise. Her editor's tone held opportunity disguised as cynicism. Go find the tears behind that smile. She took the file, knowing the story was different. Something in the boy's bright grin under Harrison's shadow bothered her, a light too real for showmanship. At home, Dakota watched the coverage alone on an iPad, silent again. All the progress vanished under the weight of adult misunderstanding. That afternoon, Samantha met Harrison for the first time. Cameras waited outside. He looked at her like he could already taste the backlash. Their interview traded questions for silence more than answers. When her recorder slipped from her hand, he reached to pick it up. Fingers brushed hers, brief, electric. She pulled back first. The story aired that night. Comments split the internet. Half fury, half defense. Then everything turned darker. A viral clip hit another platform. Zane's mother in handcuffs, crying as police led her from motel. Sometimes one story opens another. Have you ever tried to fix something good only to make it worse? Leave your thoughts below, because what happened next trapped them all in a storm money couldn't silence. He meant to write a check. He didn't mean to step into the boy's world. Before the headlines, before the scandal, it had been just a man, a girl, and a street corner. Harrison had seen cold before, but not like that, cold mixed with music, a rhythm spun from hunger and grit. Zane's movements were rough, but free. Each step shouted survival. Harrison hadn't planned to speak. Yet Dakota's hand tugged his sleeve, eyes bright again. The boy stopped, breathless, waiting. Harrison asked his name. The answer came small but solid. Zane. The boy told him about the motel room, his mother's cough, the unpaid rent. Harrison felt something catch in his throat. Money could fix roofs, not innocence. He asked where the mother was. Zane pointed east, toward gray buildings. Later, inside his car, Harrison remembered his own loss, the company drug recall that took a child's life years ago. The boy's plea pierced that memory. When he decided to help, guilt wore righteousness mask. At his penthouse that night, his phone lit up again. Another article about his charity deals. He scrolled, expression unreadable. Across the city, Samantha replayed their interview footage, noticing the tremor in his hand when he mentioned Dakota. Compassion or calculation? Hours later, a message blinked onto Harrison's encrypted line. "You're being played." Kindness had drawn him in. Now suspicion dragged him deeper. But the one watching from the sidelines, the journalist who should have accused him, couldn't decide if she wanted the truth or the man holding it. Would you trust someone everyone calls corrupt if your heart told you otherwise? Comment what you would have done. She went in to destroy his image. She came out questioning her own. Samantha Reeves' new viral fame had an expiration date, but guilt aged fast. The editor wanted headlines, not truth. She wanted clarity. Late at night, city lights painted her desk gold. She reread her notes until one line caught her eye. Zane's mother's arrest report listed, anonymous corporate tip. She dug deeper. Calls to city offices ended in polite stonewalls. Her curiosity twisted into anger. At dawn, she caught sight of Harrison again at the hospital, arguing with administrators over a medical release form for Zane's mother. No cameras, no crew. Just a man whose voice shook with something too raw for performance. They met in the elevator, metal walls, humming silence. She asked if the tip came from his team. He turned, eyes sharp but weary. "If it did, I tell you," he said quietly. Their closeness, in that tight space, carried a charge neither planned. Words almost gave way to breath, then the doors opened. When she returned to the newsroom, an alert hit her screen. New evidence suggesting someone inside Harrison's company had planted files linking the mother to fraud. Her hands trembled. The truth was turning sideways. Have you ever realized you might be chasing the wrong villain? Share below, because the next step she took would blur every line between justice and desire. Truth doesn't vanish. It hides where power tells it to. Harrison sat in his private office, lights low, city glowing beneath the glass wall. A digital audit flashed names of executives he'd once called family. One name repeated with strange frequency beside payments and deleted emails. Someone at the top was pulling threads meant to choke him. Samantha slid a USB drive across his desk. "You didn't get this from me," she said. Her voice carried exhaustion more than fear. Their eyes met with the tired respect of people learning to trust under fire. All night they worked, cross-checking transactions, searching timestamps. Between keystrokes came small laughter, tension that softened then returned. At one point she yawned, and he offered coffee from a silver pot. Her hand brushed his when reaching for the cup. Neither moved for a heartbeat. Outside, sirens blurred into the distance. Inside, a pattern appeared. Board members tied to a rival corporation feeding leaks through anonymous sources. They froze when a news alert chimed from her phone. A leak naming the anonymous source behind the charity scandal. It listed her initials. The world felt small as gaslight. She stared at Harrison. Disbelief crossed his face, cold and quick. Between them, the screen glowed with betrayal neither had started. Sometimes truth comes with your name on it even when it's not yours. Ever been blamed for something you were trying to fix? Comment if you'd fight or walk away. Because for Samantha Reeves, the fight was just beginning. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It comes from those who care enough to doubt you. The office felt colder when Harrison closed the door behind her. Samantha stood near the window, city lights reflecting off the glass like restless eyes. Between them lay the printed story, naming her as the leak. "Tell me it's false," he said quietly. She nodded, but her voice broke. "Someone used my login. My editor, he sold it." The silence snapped tight. Years of holding control turned Harrison's expression into stone, yet his hand trembled. "Do you know what this cost?" "I'm starting to," she whispered. The argument exploded. Pain carried old griefs into new wounds. She accused him of doubting too easily. He accused her of knowing too much. Distance became heat. Words faded, replaced by breath too close. Their eyes crossed the line before their bodies did. A near kiss hung there, one heartbeat away. Then both stepped back like people who remembered their scars. That night, prison records confirmed what neither wanted to read. Zane's mother had collapsed in her cell. Pneumonia untreated. Samantha quit the network at dawn and walked straight to Harrison's door. "If we keep letting others decide who deserves help, we're no better than the ones who built this mess," she said. He looked at her for a long moment, the anger draining until only resolve remained. For the first time, they stood on the same side. Have you ever realized the person you blamed might be the one standing to save you? Comment below, because this was the turn that thawed more than pride. The world heard everyone's opinions, until the one voice that mattered broke the silence. Dakota's therapist had tried for months. Nothing worked. Then, while Harrison talked on the phone about bail hearings, he heard a faint sound from the hallway. "Dad," she said. The word froze in mid-step. Her voice was rough but alive. "Help Zane's mom. She didn't do anything." He knelt, arms shaking. "How do you know that?" "I dreamed it," she said simply. "She just wants to go home." Those few words tore through his defenses. The next morning, Harrison petitioned for a private review of the woman's case. That night, Samantha returned carrying folders and weariness. When Harrison opened the door, Dakota ran into her arms. The sight startled both adults. Something unspoken passed between them. Hope tangled with hesitation. Over coffee, plans formed. Calls to lawyers, visits to city records. Samantha's hand brushed his when she showed him the file. This time neither pulled away. Later, while Harrison tucked Dakota into bed, an envelope waited on his desk. No address, just one line typed neatly. "Save her, and you lose everything." Have you ever faced a threat that felt personal not because of power, but because of purpose? Drop your thoughts below, because choices made in fear soon define what we become. Every empire has cracks. He started with one unsigned note. The next board meeting ran on tension instead of agenda. Harrison's calm masked an inner storm. A senior partner leaned forward. "Drop this charity project or the old scandal resurfaces." The message was clear. Protect the company. Let the boy's mother rot. He walked out mid-sentence. Outside, Samantha waited. Their eyes said everything. In the shadows of the parking garage, she grabbed his sleeve. "You can't meet them alone." "I built this company," he answered. "If it kills me, I'll clean it myself." "Then let me stand next to you." Her courage hit harder than any threat. They spent the night planning counters, tracing money trails, anticipating leaks. Under the hum of monitors, attraction mixed with fatigue. When she nodded off on the couch, he draped his jacket over her shoulders. For a man who bought silence daily, that small gesture felt louder than confession. Near midnight, his phone vibrated. An alert from security. One of his warehouses had been set on fire. Sometimes pressure burns through metal faster than through conscience. Have you ever fought to do right only to watch everything you built start to fall? Share below, because the flames were only the first warning. Files burn faster than guilt, but some flames spread too wide. Smoke coiled into the frozen air above the industrial district. Harrison's limousine reached the site before the fire trucks finished hosing the ruins. The smell of wet ash clung to his suit. He watched footage of himself from nearby phones already hitting the web. Inside the collapsed building, investigators found fragments of hard drives, useless now. All evidence gone. Another reporter's voice echoed. Cover-up or coincidence? Then someone shouted her name, Samantha. She had followed a lead here earlier, but now stood near an officer, soot-streaked and coughing. Cameras caught them both in frame. Her torn coat, his hand steadying her waist as smoke rolled behind. In that instant, rumor turned to spectacle. He pulled her close, shielding her face from flashlights. Beneath the chaos, she whispered, "They're coming for you next." That line cut through noise, sharper than the sirens. The story was no longer about pity or scandal. It was survival. Ever feel a moment when you know life won't go back to what it was an hour ago? Leave a comment, because this was that moment for both of them. Money builds walls, but guilt finds the gates. The estate overlooking Lake Michigan was never meant to look like a fortress. Yet now floodlights washed its stone walls, while drones hovered beyond the fence. Reporters filled the road below. Inside, Harrison and Samantha moved through hallways lit by security lamps. "You can stay here until the court hearing," he said quietly. "The press would devour you outside." "I'm not hiding," she replied. But fatigue won. That night, Dakota crept downstairs holding a stuffed bear. She climbed onto the couch beside Samantha, curling close like she'd known her forever. Watching from the doorway, Harrison felt an unexpected calm. Later, after Dakota slept, he found Samantha on the terrace with a glass of wine, hair catching the glow from the city beyond. "You still think redemption's possible?" she asked. He listened to the wind beat against the tall glass doors. "If it isn't, all this means nothing." She turned, eyes soft. "Then don't give up before it starts." Their hands met at the railing. Simple contact, steady warmth. The quiet between them said more than words could repair. Near midnight, his secure line buzzed with a message from a hacker contact. Data retrieved from the burned site. One name appeared, someone on his own board. The traitor finally had a face. Have you ever felt truth knock softly before it breaks the door open? Comment below, because from this point on, Harrison Langley's fight shifts from survival to justice, and love might be the only weapon left. He trusted this man with his company, his legacy, and lost both. Harrison watched the footage in silence. Jacob Bennett, his longtime partner, stood before the press claiming innocence, eyes dry, voice perfect. Yet on Harrison's screen, another file loaded, payments, offshore accounts, and leaked emails that matched Jacob's code name. The realization cut through every defense he'd built. This wasn't corporate rivalry. It was betrayal dressed as brotherhood. Samantha stood beside him, reading the files over his shoulder. "He sold you to save himself." "He sold more than that," Harrison answered. "He sold what we built." Hours later at a private hangar, engines hummed as Jacob readied his jet. Harrison waited by the stairway, coat pulled tight, gun shaking in one hand. Jacob laughed softly. "You wouldn't risk everything for pride." "This isn't pride." His finger almost tightened, but a hand moved gently over his wrist. "Samantha." Her eyes steadied him. "Don't give him the ending he wants," she said. Jacob took the pause as mercy and ran. But mercy came with punishment of its own. Minutes later, the screens in Harrison's car lit up. Messages from an unknown account. Photographs of Dakota. "Come alone if you want her back." Have you ever realized the person you trusted most was the one holding the threat that breaks you? Comment below, because for Harrison Langley, that moment had arrived. Every deal he ever made was for profit, until he made one with his soul. Snow pelted the windshield as Harrison drove through empty industrial lanes on Chicago's South Side. Samantha rode beside him, laptop glowing with location data traced from Jacob's encrypted call. Dakota's phone signal pulsed from a shipping yard near the river. Siren screamed somewhere behind them. He ignored all of them. Money could buy time, but not this kind. Minutes rolled like dice. They found the girl seated on a chair inside a dim hangar, Jacob standing across from her, trembling between guilt and greed. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said, waving the pistol like an apology. Samantha stayed calm. "Then stop it now." Harrison took one step forward. "Take the money, Jacob. Leave the rest." Jacob's hand shook. "It's not you I answer to anymore." The next seconds blurred. Samantha darted forward, pulling Dakota down as a shot cracked across the steel walls. Harrison lunged, dragging Jacob to the ground. When silence fell again, Jacob lay gasping, weapon kicked aside. Police lights flooded the hangar. Harrison held Dakota tight, his heartbeat wild against her frozen hands. Samantha knelt beside them, eyes wet with relief and exhaustion. Before Jacob was led away, he whispered 3 words that chilled Harrison more than the wind outside. "She ordered this." "Who?" Harrison asked. Jacob's weak smile gave her name, Evelyn Cross. Sometimes the biggest rescue doesn't end the war. It only names the right enemy. Have you ever won one fight just to realize you started another? Tell me what you do. Chapter 13. The true enemy is almost equal to 400 words. Justice costs everything when the guilty wear halos. Evelyn Cross had been the comm center of Langley Biotech for 20 years. Mentor, investor, public face. Now Harrison stood outside her high-rise office, security footage and bank logs in hand. She greeted him with a smile practiced for headlines. "You should have stayed quiet." He placed the drive on her desk. "You made me the villain to steal the throne." Her laugh echoed against the glass. "You care too much about image. I just removed the audience." Samantha stepped from the doorway. "The audience is watching again." She had live-streamed the confrontation to a feed of millions. Evelyn's stance faltered. Screens in the lobby below displayed the live confession as police entered the building. Harrison's voice stayed steady. "You taught me profit over principle. I finally learned the cost." Evelyn was led out silently, silver cuffs flashing under bright lights. Reporters waited downstairs, asking if this ended the scandal. Harrison said only, "It ends when the people we hurt can start to heal." He turned to see Samantha waiting, pride and relief sharing space in her eyes. When their hands met, the contact carried every word they hadn't said: gratitude, exhaustion, and something deeper built from battle instead of comfort. Ever see power crumble not from force, but from truth spoken aloud? Leave a thought below, because truth, when timed right, levels empires. He once measured love and losses. Now it looked back at him through two sets of eyes. Weeks passed before calm returned. The company stabilized, the charges dismissed. Harrison spent mornings at therapy sessions, where Dakota relearned balance. First steps cautious, then confident. Across town, Zane and his mother moved into a small apartment arranged through the new nonprofit now under Harrison's name and Samantha's guidance. Cameras caught their laughter once, but this time no scandals followed, just quiet applause. Samantha's byline returned to national screens, not for takedowns but for rebuilding stories, human, plain, hopeful. Her closing line read, "Redemption isn't a headline, it's a process." That night, she returned to the brownstone. The city outside was gentle for once. Harrison met her in the kitchen doorway, flour on his sleeves from trying to cook with Dakota. Their smiles met halfway. He brushed her cheek with his thumb, a movement slow like trust rebuilding itself. The first kiss came easy, not rushed this time but sure. Morning light carried new words unspoken until now, family. And when Samantha placed his hand across her stomach days later, his silence said everything. Ever believe life gives you one last test before letting you rest? Comment below. Their test had become their purpose. The wind still cut through Chicago streets, but this time it carried laughter. A year had passed. Harrison watched Dakota run across the same park where it all began, her steps steady, her laughter echoing Zane's distant rhythm as he practiced nearby for a community event. The new foundation building rose across the street, the Dakota Center for Youth Arts. Inside, Zane's mother supervised young dancers warming up in warm clothes and brighter colors than he'd ever owned. Samantha stood beside Harrison, hands clasped. A gentle smile traced her face. "You remember how we met?" she asked. "In the middle of a storm," he said, "and somehow we made our own weather." He lifted her hand and kissed her wrist, a quiet vow of promise rather than control. Around them, the city moved on. No cameras, no scandals, just life continuing in rhythm. He whispered, "Ready for one more?" Meaning the future, meaning the child they were waiting on. She nodded, eyes glistening. "Always. Have you ever learned that love doesn't fix pain? It teaches you how to build again." Drop a comment if you believe second chances still exist. And if this story touched something in you, hit that like, share it forward, and subscribe for more tales that remind us. Wealth isn't the cure for loss, empathy is. Because when the ice finally breaks, what's left is the truth that warmth can